Hello again, this is Arlen from Trader's Gate. I'm bringing you a pretty quick tutorial on how to trim up and cover up your seam allowances. This technique is called a flat fell seam. This is really great if you do not have something like a serger, or if you don't want to do the usual zigzag, or if you don't have anything like pinching shears. This technique is really awesome at getting a very secured fit. It is used a lot in blue jeans, other jackets and outer seams. It adds a whole lot of stability and is pretty cool. And once you know how to do it, it's pretty easy. So I have here two pieces of fabric. They're about the same size. We'll line them up. I'm going to be doing this in real time, so there's no edits, just to show you just how fast this is. So the first thing you want to do, you make sure that your fabric is prepped. I'm just using two pieces of some leftover scrap that I had. It's already been ironed, but that process doesn't take too long. We necessarily do not have to pin it, depending on how big it is. If you're doing something like a tunic, you might want to have it pinned just to make sure that everything is lined up. Plugging in my machine. I'm using white thread in both the bobbin and on the spool. This is to show the contrast and to make sure that everything is visible. My seam allowance for this is pretty much the same that I use for all of my singular seam things. That's going to be 1 inch. So we're going to zero that. I'm going to start it off with normal. Finish it. Now, at this point, this would be like your typical seam. So you have your inside. Now, one thing I'm going to do here, which might seem kind of weird at first, not adjusting the light. I have this marked. This is the front. So this is important if this is a tunic. This is the back. We're doing a weird beat. Now, the reason why this is important is because if you're going to be doing Dragon Master, or if you want to do quals, this isn't so as much important as what we're doing here. But you want all of these to face the same way. So the first step we're going to do, we have this, we're going to make it taut. We're going to iron it down. You do need a pair of scissors. Find your back piece, which is this one, and we are going to cut away approximately half of that seam allowance. I'm going to do a little trick to make this fast and easy. I'm just lining up the seam there. Cut away about half. Throw it away. That's going into a dog toy later. So now we have the regular seam right here. This is full. We did not touch it. We only cut the back one, and that's cut in half. The next step to this, do what you have to. I like to iron it. So now everything is facing forwards. This is the front piece. This is also the underside. So it's the same process as doing any regular seam, except now we're going to envelop the back allowance with the front, bringing it to that original seam line, which is in white. You can do this one of two ways. I always like to have it just touching that line. The reason for that is because we're going to be flipping this from the front to the back. And if it overlaps that threading, you'll get a little bit of a bunch up from that seam fabric. So putting it just to the front, it's ironed down. Now we're going to push it to the back, iron it down, and you'll see, even though we did a full inch of that seam allowance, it's only going to end up being half an inch here. So remember that. Whatever you're comfortable with, I'm very comfortable with half-inch seams on this and 1 inches. You just want to make sure that everything remains uniform. I'm going to use some water here. Make sure that the heat penetrates through the fabric. Good. Now it's laying a little bit more flat. Now, the next step to this is a little bit more difficult than the previous stitch work that we just did, but now we're going to be sewing down this line as close to that edge as humanly possible. Now for me, I like to have it reversed here. The reason why is because I can move my sewing needle from the center to the left. I'm going to use the inside of the foot here as a guide, so that way I know that my fabric is staying straight and we're going to be getting that stitch work that I want to see. So you can pull it a little bit closer. I always find it very impressive when people have this stitch down really close to that line. It shows a lot of control, and that takes a lot of practice to do. So just like another seam, back and forth. Now we're going forward. You do not have to have this pinned in place, but it does help. I've done this a lot with all my scraps, so I'm kind of used to this. I just go slow, keeping it uniform. Another really cool thing that I learned with my particular sewing feet that I use, that original seam mark is right on the outside here. So I have 3 points making sure that this is all straight from the outside of this foot, the inside of the opposite foot, and then of course your stitch work. And you get it to the end, just like the other seam, back and forth, back and forth. Pull this up, and that is done. And this is the inside of your flat fell seam. So this is the inside, this is the back. Like I said, you can see that there's that little roll right here. That's totally fine. Here's the original seam. So if this was a tunic, this would be the back of your tunic on the underside. So the reverse side that you're not going to see. This is the front. You'll see 2 stitch lines on the inside, but on the outside, there's just the one. And then you have the roll in the front. So that is how I do flat fell seams. Hopefully that helps you guys. So till next time.